Hi, I am Tishampati Dhar. I come to you today from the land of the Ghana people of the Adelaide Plains, and I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. I acknowledge their deep connection to the land and the value they place on the environment. Perhaps the values of this ancient culture can tell us something about one of the newest value systems we have created as the human society. We have chosen to record this talk in a motorsports garage full of performance cars. I chose to do this because motorsports is accused of being wasteful, burning up a lot of energy, same acquisitions that are leveled towards Bitcoin. Motorsports has led to many innovations in the motor vehicle, in safety, in performance, in efficiency of the engines, in the road construction. So I believe this energy-hungry experiment we are doing with Bitcoin there is something we will learn from it, and we will make the world a better place. Today's talk is called Confessions of a Crypto Miner. It talks about my journey becoming aware of this new value system we are discussing, particularly Bitcoin initially and others, and delving into them and then delving out of them while still retaining observers' interest in these systems. The byline for this talk is why scientists became interested in money, why even today scientists are studying economics. I will start with a small historical note. One of the scientists that I really admire and has perhaps changed our understanding of the universe is Sir Isaac Newton. Towards the end of his career, after he had wrapped up writing Principia and doing all of the great maths and physics that we value and know him for, he became master of the Royal Mint of England and operated out of the Tower of London. He became famous for putting counterfeiters to the death. Another famous scientist earlier than Newton who became interested in currencies is Nicolaus Copernicus from Poland. He wrote a treatise after writing about the orbits of the planets, about money supply and how that creates value and how increasing money supply can create inflation, one of our earliest understandings of this phenomena. Today we have Nobel Prize winners like Ilya Peregrine discussing thermodynamics in context of economics. The journey for me, I consider myself somewhat of a scientist, but even though I am an engineer by profession, my journey goes through the stage of inception, becoming aware of this concept, exploring the concept, and then interacting with the community, which is what this conference is all about. It's about interactions, conversations, and learnings from each other. So what many currencies do you need in the world? What currencies have you got in your wallet? Perhaps only one and a few cards? The gold used to be the base currency for many years until it was replaced by the petrodollar on the 15th of August 1971. Some conspiracy theorists say this led to the demise of the then American President Richard Nixon. My answer for the currencies we really need is we just need one. We just need time. We value each other's time. And I will talk about how Bitcoin captures time, or gold does capture the passage of time in the universe. One of the catchphrases I have is currency is currency. Something that is time recent is what we value. The inception part of this story. I became aware of Bitcoin while walking around in Salamanca markets in Hobart. I was doom scrolling through my social media. I'm mostly active on Twitter. I looked at some post about someone saying, oh, don't worry about the price dropping below $1 to 50 cents. It will come back up. I was like, what is this thing they're talking about, as I paid for my coffee? And volunteered at the Wilderness Society stall and sat on the floor selling soft penguins. I bought myself some GPUs. This was the exploration phase. I plugged them in, created a small fire hazard in my spare room, and heard lots of noisy things going on in there. I went on to some FPGAs. I went on to some ASICs. I learned a lot. Being an electronics engineer, a tinkerer, a maker, this was fun for me. I also started interacting with people other than speaking to computers, which is what I do. I'm an introvert. This talk is a forced exercise, but I'm having a lot of help. I joined a mining pool. Mining pools are what you join because your GPUs, however many you have, unless you have a whole warehouse full of them, are never enough to get you one Bitcoin. So I joined a mining pool. The one I joined, perhaps surreptitiously, was influenced by my upbringing. And I was born in a family of goldsmiths. I still buy some custom jewelry. The mining pool was called Eligius. Eligius is, in the Catholic faith, is the patron saint of goldsmiths. I also went to a Catholic boys' school. Maybe somehow resonated in my mind. It brought me also into contact with one of the Bitcoin core developers, Luke Dash Jr. I learned a lot from them and the community on how these things functioned, and delved even deeper and continued my exploration with the support of the community. After this initial phase, I had to keep going. I felt like I had invested a lot of time. I wanted to do the mining seriously. This section of my talk talks about this in the frame of three different things. What did I mine? Which currency to mine? Which coin to buy is the question these days. Not many people are mining. They're looking at this as a speculative investment option. So the first question is which? How did I do it in the early days before we had the exchanges where you could replace fiat with a crypto? How did I do it in the early days about CPU miners, GPU miners, FPGAs, ASIC miners? And how long did I do it for? Why did I start? When did I start? Why did I pull out? When did I pull out? The first is a brief timeline. So I discussed my inception of these ideas, and I became aware, and I started working with some CPU miners in Hobart. I came to Adelaide after my stint in Hobart. I filled up my apartment with GPUs and jalapenos. I continued in that line until I got married and had a son and received a very big electricity bill. Around 2015, I started winding back down on this hobby, and sort of the electricity bill sent me down another path, which I will talk about, around energy. So how did I mine? So meet the jalapeno. The jalapeno is, instead of being a very hot chili, is also gets very hot Bitcoin miner. These were nearing the end of their lifetime and were quite cheap on eBay, but being an electronics engineer and tinkerer, I could get more heat out of them, or make them run hotter by overclocking them. So I bought a bunch of them, took them apart, and changed their firmware and overclocked them and ran them myself for a while, and then started selling them back on eBay. And you can also meet one of the latest ones, which my friend has recently got rid of, the Myeisen. The Myeisen he bought for around $200 on AliExpress and sold, because it became too noisy again, for around $2,000 on eBay. It's one of the few pieces of hardware that has appreciated in value over time. Which is the next question we're addressing here. Which coins to mine? The Bitcoin, the big time coin, is obviously the first one. You could merge mine at the same time, something that would give you DNS entries, name entries in a system called Namecoin. I did that for a little while. I became aware of alts. The Bitcoin maximalists don't like them, but they are around, something that exists because the society has a need for them, due to different algorithms, different different algorithms for creating them, different algorithms for distributing them. So Litecoin, Bitcoin variants, and then other ones that are coming along. I only really mined Bitcoin, Litecoin, and other script-based and SHA-based ones. This sort of is another historical note. The existence of multiple currencies is not a new phenomenon. Every country has their own. But we have a reference currency in the crypto world. The Bitcoin is the reference currency, being the oldest prime mover. The alts are like local currencies of other countries, and over time they come into an equilibrium based on the value people put, not on the country, but on the ideas behind which led to the creation of these alts. You should have a look at the research by Léon Walras, a French economist, mathematician, famous for writing a book in French full of equations, which some Nobel Prize winners say would have had a bigger impact had he written it in English. Alts and BTC similarly will reach an equilibrium. The landscape of alts, meme coins, Bitcoin forks are like countries, and we will come to a reasonable point where we value each of these ideas and they will come to a stable exchange rate between themselves. The next which is, how do I move between the real world in which countries, state entities, nation states are issuing currencies, and this alternative financial world which is emerging, is seeded, and that is typically through an exchange. The story of Bitcoin pizza is famous in the crypto community. One of the first real-world transactions was for a Bitcoin pizza. This is called. It was actually 2 pizzas, I believe, and someone paid 10,000 or so Bitcoins to buy a couple of pizzas. And there is a website which tracks the current price of the Bitcoin pizza, and that would be in millions now. My equivalent of a Bitcoin pizza is a laptop. I bought a laptop and I take it around and say, this is my house. And the choosing of an exchange lets us not do barter in this way. We can exchange crypto for fiat in a particular exchange. I had several false starts here. Some of the exchanges I participated in got hacked, like Mt. Gox in Japan, got possessed by federal authorities like PTCE, which had their servers in America, or was shut down by currency control measures in a very controlling government, i.e. communist regimes in Hong Kong, which was ANX BTC. I have a very clear memory of my wife Rani and I going to a friend's wedding in Hong Kong and walking down the streets of Lang Kwai Fong to a little hole in the wall where we exchanged $500 for some crypto. The exchange person walked up into the attic and came back with a receipt saying, yes, your $500 had now been exchanged into Bitcoin on our exchange. So the last piece of when I talked about the brief timeline, and this is sort of the wind down of the timeline. Why and when did I stop? In 2015, some of the energy prices in South Australia, where I am physically still, reached some of the highest in the world. And I received a big bill shock because I was not keeping an eye on the energy lightning ball while looking at the crypto crystal ball. So my wife, being an econometrist, looked at this and said, this is not working out, Tish. You should sell these things. So I got rid of them, and we needed the room for our newly born son. The lessons that I learned from this experiment, adventure, craziness, some would say, is what we need to value in the world. I have in my slides the cover of The Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith. What we should value, and what I saw being valued in creating the cryptos, was essentially engineering. New electronics engineering, power engineering, energy generation engineering to create ASICs, the cryptography, and the military strength which I saw being exercised by countries like China to stop exchanges. And also energy, the flow of energy from the environment into the miner, our ability to tap and trap energy and channel it through power lines into creating a currency. It's no surprise the world is awash with multiple types of cryptos now, and miners and ASICs. We have sort of reached the peaks of physical growth in our world, and the exchanges are changing between fiat and crypto. If you look at some of the talks during COVID, nation states have removed the limiters on their treasuries and are creating unlimited amounts of fiat currency. So there is at peak $500 billion of Bitcoin traded per day. It's not going anywhere quickly. You'll see news of a crash. Having come from a time when Bitcoin was 50 cents, sounds like noise to me. Bitcoin also has a huge energy burden on the world. Bitcoin is estimated to burn in a year about the same energy consumption of a small country. So Malaysia, which is a pretty populous country, and Sweden, which is a pretty cold country and spends a lot on heating. So this amount of energy being burned also sort of grates me, and sort of led to my choice in not continuing to mine for myself. I put out these questions, and I have friends on either side of the crypto debate. Some of my friends love it, some of my friends hate it, some of my friends don't really understand it. I have a few quotes in my slides. One of them is from a couple colleagues, Bo Gibson, who is starting up a 25 megawatt power plant, some of the energy from which will be used for mining. His line is, "Power is power. Your ability to generate power gives you power." Another of my previous boss had this line where, when he came to understand crypto, was essentially, our world is rooted in systems put in place by force in the past, and he would like to find a way to use crypto to, what he says, to hack poverty. One of my most recent colleagues in the government had this line to put in Twitter is, "Proof of work is one of the biggest mistakes in tech history. If only Bitcoin was doing something useful with all that compute." To all this, I have my line, which says, state clearly what is useful to our society. Come to the understanding with each other, what is it useful? From individual behavior hypothesis, that leads us to choose mining Bitcoin over spending that compute on the said useful. How can useful activities be properly rewarded in our financial reward system so that people choose to do them instead of spending their efforts and energies mining cryptos? So this was an ending of my crypto journey. I have not completely exited. Whenever you do something, it becomes part of you. It scars your body and mind in some way. So it wasn't one ending and a new beginning. I have done talks in the past at this conference about the things I moved on to. Energy monitoring. I became very interested, or reinvigorated my interest in energy. I'm an electrical and electronics engineer. The electrical part of it is very concerned with energy. The electronics part of me started going back to the disciplines I had learned in university and not practiced around PCB design, gateware for FPGAs, and so on. And the new thing that I picked up, finance, economics, the mechanisms of debt, money supplies, treasury functioning, and so on. If you understand any of those, this is a call to action to make global transactions between countries, nations, and each other a better place by building something. Don't get carried away by how much money you will get out of building it. Build it for something that you consider useful, something that your friends and groups of people consider useful will improve their lives. And good luck on your journey. I got lucky in being exposed to the crypto through my scanning of the environment, and I learned a lot. And I can recommend a final book on this, Debt by David Graeber. It talks about how crypto is a form of bullion, how bullion and debt interplay and have swapped places in our society over history. And I learned a lot from this and gave me newer understanding on why crypto has taken so much mind share in our society. Thank you.